Okay, the last thing I want to do this week is I want to make these be anchors that link to the section. So if I click here, I want it to go here. If I click on contents, I want it to go to contents and so on. And then right above the header to end the previous section, I want to have a link back to the table of contents. So let's add the link to the table of contents first. And then we'll make these live. So I have to remember to get rid of this table of contents goes here text. So let's do that first. So let me get rid of that piece of text. And then the way we're going to make this live is at the start of my table of contents, I'm going to have just a span with an ID. And then, well, let me actually show you what this looks like in HTML. So I'm going to right click and save as, and I'll just save this anywhere. I already have one. I'm going to save this in my downloads folder. And then in my downloads folder, I'm going to get a new tab and drag and drop. I got it twice. That was odd. Only have it once here. So yeah, when you go to save it, it renders it, runs the JavaScript again, I guess, and so I got it twice. But I'm going to go ahead and edit this with Notepad++, and you'll see it actually has all the HTML this time around. So what I want to do is, in the start of my table of contents, I want to have a span with an ID. Let's say Fetch Page TOC, so that there's no collision, and end the span. And then right above each header, so right above this H1 and H2 and all that, I'm going to have anchor href equals #, and then that ID. And then say back to top. So reload. So no visible change, but here above eloquent JavaScript back to top, and that puts me there. And then to link to the headers, what I'm going to do is inside of each header, I'm going to add span ID equals fetch page TOC 1 for the first header. And then the text for that header here, I'm going to go ahead and add anchor href equals #, fetch page TOC 1. And then close off the anchor at the end of the text. Okay, so now clicking there takes me to the right place, and then back to top goes to the top. And then at the end of the contents, I probably also want to link back to the top. So back to FetchPage.js, here's the thing that builds the table of contents. And let me get rid of that HTML. I'm not actually using it anymore. So before I append this header, I want to create an element. Var top is document.create element span, and then top.id equals fetch page table of contents. And I'm actually going to be using this piece of text a fair amount, so I'm going to make a constant out of it. And it'll just be a local constant. Okay, so there's my TOC tag. And then document.get element by ID TOC, append child top. And then here where I'm doing move content, after moving all the contents into the contents tag, I'm also going to make an anchor tag and set anchor.href equal to # plus TOC tag, and that will take me to the top. And then anchor.innerText is, I'll just use top, like so. So reload, and now, oh, that was the static one. Let's go back here and try the live one. So I have an error, invalid or unexpected token. Fetch page line 185. Not sure why didn't that take me to 185? Let's go to 185. Oh, no, I have a single quote and a double quote. That's what I did wrong. There. Okay, so that worked. So at the bottom I should have something. No, oh, I forgot to append it. So that's going to be this thing dot append child anchor. There. So there's my top tag, and it takes me to the top. Okay, so now let's do these. So that's going to be where I build the table of contents. And when I add a list item, this only happens in one place, so that's good. So inside the list item, I'm going to have document.create element anchor, and then anchor.href is equal to # plus TOC tag plus underscore plus, and let's use header count. And then we'll start header count at 0. And every time we add a list item, we're going to increment header count at the end. So every one we add is going to get a new one. And then that's the tag. And node is the header that I'm adding. So instead of child.innerText, I want to append child child.append child of anchor, and then set the anchor.innerText equal to scrape text node. So I have an li with an anchor inside of it, and then the anchor points to the header and has the text. And then for the header, which is node, I want to add a span. So var span is equal to document.createElement span, and span.id is talk tag plus underscore, we'll use single quotes to be consistent, plus header count. So this matches this. And then I want to make the span be the first thing inside of the node. Or actually I want the span to be the first thing inside of the node's children. And there's a problem here because DOM doesn't actually provide a method for putting something on the front of the children. Append child adds it to the end. I want something like prepend child, but there is no such call. So what you have to do instead is a little bit of a hack. Node.insert before span, and then I want to get the first child of node, which is node.child nodes sub 0. So that's how you add span to the front of the list of children. Let's see how this goes. So I'm going to reload. So these are all linked. Cool. Always nice when it works. Okay, so other pages and then translations, top. And then to add a link back to the top before each header, I basically want to do the same thing I just did, except I want to find the parent of this thing and add that link before the parent. So that's going to look like var anchor. That's a different anchor. So we'll already have an anchor var. So anchor is document.createElement anchor. Anchor.href is # talk tag. So that's the thing for the top. And then node.parentNode.insert before anchor node. So find my parent and insert the anchor right before me. So right before the header. And then I also need to set the inner text to top. Okay, so let's try that. Got an error. Anchor is not defined. Oh, it's anchor. There we go. Oh, and I have an infinite loop. So here's something about the DOM. Yeah. So this is going to just keep going. I have to basically close the tag or close the tab at that point. So here's the problem. When you insert something before something else, it pushes everything down, and all of these children and what have you are live. So the loop is hitting the same header each time. I'm inserting something before the header, and these loops that are looking through each tag one at a time looking for the header, it finds the header and then it adds something before the header, and so now the header is at the next position and it finds the same header, next position, and so on. So yeah, so it's actually this loop right here is having a problem when I try to add the node in front of it. So that's just one of the properties of the HTML collection, and it's sort of unfortunate right now. So what I'm going to do instead is a little bit of a hack. So right now, this is accessing the HTML collection child nodes on node, and this is dynamic and changes. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to turn this into an array, which is static. And I'm going to do that like this. So var children is equal to slice.call on node.childNodes. So basically arrays have a method called slice, and if you call the slice function on an array with no arguments, you're going to just get a copy of the array. And this isn't a real array, but this will convert it to a real array. And since that's static, this data structure won't change when I update the DOM. So let me go ahead and load my localhost 133 fetch page. Oh, that was the test one. I want week 7 fetch page. Oh, so no, still not quite working. Yep, still infinite looping. So let's go ahead and see if we can find out where. So here's where I'm adding the level. And let me go ahead and break here. And reload. Okay, so I'm in add level and check node. Here's that loop. Oh, that's wrong. Okay, so let me go ahead and stop this. Actually, I'm going to just need to reload. So I forgot to change this to children as well. There we go. Reload. There we go. So here's my top link. And at the end of the section, back to top. Translations. Good. Okay, so that's actually doing what I wanted to do. Let me just make this small. So this will be one example of how to change the style properties of an element that you create. So here, I want the anchor dot style dot set attribute And this is going to be the font text size. Let's go 0.5 M. See if that works. Nope. So let's put a breakpoint and see. So anchor.style. I might just want to set the text size property directly here. Is it? Yeah, it might be font size. Font size. Well, let's try setting font size. So let me set the font size property. Well, no error. Continue. Yeah, so it's tiny now. Good. And I'll do the bottom one as well.